here on Animal House Radio, special Saturday night edition of the Animal House Radio via American Forces Network. And we have two living legends in the house today. First and foremost, my quintessential wingman. And what better wingman to have than a three-star Air Force general than my good pal, Lieutenant General Jerry Martinez. Jerry, thank you as always.
Yeah, thank you, Carlo, for having me. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here.
And last but certainly not least, a living legend, the man who's been in doing his thing and entertaining us for over 50 plus years. It is my honor and my privilege to welcome back Mr. John Amos.
Thank you. Glad to be back with you.
John, I can't tell you how excited we are here. Coming to America, the second one, everybody was waiting for this. Our mouths were watering. You know, I followed you on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook on how you were coming along with the shooting. And first thing I want to say is, you know, for a guy who grew up in the 80s like myself, and I got to see it first run. I got to enjoy it. Like, you know, that was my thing. Just like the people who watched the Honeymooners first run, that's, you know what I'm saying? They get to claim that. But why did we have to wait so long for the sequel?
You'll have to ask the production team on that one. I know the only thing I know for a fact is that we've all been waiting patiently, sometimes impatiently, for this sequel. But it's here now, and from what I hear, people are enjoying it, and it's everything they hoped it would be. So far, so good.
Absolutely. And what I like about it is, you know, there's certain movies where, you know, you made them, all right, you got to leave it alone. But this is a movie that justified a sequel because you really want to know what happened to Akeem and all the characters. You know, they can justify making it. There's some movies where, like, they try to they try to do a sequel and then a third one, and it's like, all right, enough's enough already. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we wanted to, you know, and what I liked about it the best is that they answered every question that a diehard fan would want to know. What happened to this character? What happened to that character? And we got flooded with them all, and that's what made it a terrific film.
I'm glad to hear that because that was my reaction totally. I had waited with, like so many others, for the sequel. I was curious to what would happen with the characters, and they answered all my questions and any reservations I might have had about a sequel. Because, as you said, most sequels are questionable in terms of their value, entertainment value, but this one holds up, and it's everything that people had hoped to see.
Absolutely. Jerry, do you have any questions? I'll yield the floor to you.
Yeah, so first, you know, Coming to America, the original, one of my favorite movies ever. My kids bought me the DVD back in those days, you know, and put it in my Christmas stocking because they know I probably watched it 20, 30 times. And I haven't seen the second one yet, but not because I haven't wanted to. Our son lives in Denver, and he's going to be traveling out here in a couple weeks, and we're actually saving that movie for when the whole family gets together to watch it. But what's that, John?
Good together. I was just saying that would be a good reason to get together, to watch that and do some laughing together. That's what families need to do right now. Laugh together.
Oh, amen. Amen. You know, and that show, it was just always great with me. And you know, your character in that show, you've had some very serious roles, you know, in your past. But what I really liked about that character, I just liked that he was such a wheeler dealer. You know, that guy's working all angles, man, in the movie, you know, on the first one, you know, being that I haven't seen the second one. And my favorite part is how he's riding just on the fringes of being a McDonald's, but it's a McDowell's, and he's, working all this stuff to keep McDonald's away from him while, you know, selling hamburgers and doing everything. But I thought that they just cast that really well, having you in there and a lighthearted role to a degree. And then also, I didn't realize something, John, till I was looking some things up, that in 1971, you were actually in a McDonald's commercial a long time ago. And I actually found the commercial. I said, I got to see this thing. And so I looked it up and I watched it. And it's almost like a Broadway production. Carlo, you got to watch this. Go find this commercial because I didn't know McDonald's made commercials like that. It's really about singing and choreography and this whole group of folks are in it, and sure as heck, John's right in the middle of it.
If
And
I would
so
have known, I would have downloaded it and played it. But yeah,
it's
yeah.
really actually good. I liked it.
I think the thing that's most significant about that commercial, two things. One, in real life, I worked for the first McDonald's that ever existed in all of Canada. I went to work for them as a trainee. But on the other side of it, that was the first singing, dancing commercial ever for any food product. And when they presented it to the McDonald's Corporation, they weren't sure if they wanted to go ahead and do that, but they did, and it worked out just fine. And to this day, I have fond memories of doing that commercial, singing and dancing and selling burgers. It was quite a treat, quite an experience.
Well,
Yeah.
when that commercial came out, I was a kid living in Germany. My father was stationed in the military, and we didn't get commercials in Germany. As part of the Armed Forces Network, we didn't get commercials. And
Okay.
so I missed all that. And I have a pretty good memory when it comes to cinema and all these types of things. And so I saw it for the first time today, and it was awesome. You've got to watch it, Carlo. It's very different than the commercials of today.
Oh yeah, I used to. You know what? The commercials of today, they're so boring. I love the old, plop plop, fizz fizz, and Mean Joe Green with the when he tossed the kid to Jersey, the Coke commercial. Those were real commercials back in the day.
Right. They were memorable.
Yeah, yeah. John, I got to tell you, like I said, I'm a lifer with you. You're doing it 50 plus years, but I got to tell you, I mean, everything you do is phenomenal. You did the work you did in 2.5 Men was great. Coming to America, both movies. But my favorite character of all time, and I guess growing up in Newark, and my father was a wise guy and all that, I loved Let's Do It Again. And I love the character of Kansas City Mac because he was just a class act.
Thank you. I enjoyed the role, and I was surrounded, obviously, by a great cast of characters and actors. So it was a cakewalk. I couldn't have
Yeah.
enjoyed myself more, and the fact that the check didn't bounce made it even better.
That's always a good thing, right? When it doesn't bounce. But I just, especially during this pandemic, I find myself, because the news cycle is so horrible. What they're doing, the news cycle to me today reminds me of like when they did that radio broadcast of World of Worlds where they scared the hell out of everybody.
Orson
So
Welles.
yeah, so I find myself watching anything that'll uplift me. I'll watch Good Times. I'll watch Everybody Loves Raymond. Let's Do It Again. Uptown Saturday Night. They make me laugh my ass off, and I forget about that there's a pandemic, even if it's for a half hour.
Yeah, everybody needs to laugh now more than ever. I
Yeah.
agree with you 100%.
So just for those of us just joining us, we are speaking now with legendary actor John Amos, starring in the Coming to America 2, which premiered on Amazon Prime Video on March 5th. And if you guys haven't seen it, I don't know what you're waiting for. Go check it out. I've watched it twice already, and I find it enjoyable. Like we were talking earlier, there's certain movies that you want to see a sequel to, and certain movies like, why did they do this? And you're gonna like this. All the beloved characters that from the first one are there. So I highly recommend everybody watching it. Now, John, when you reported to the set, did everybody was that same feeling like the first one came in back again?
It was like a high school reunion in that you haven't seen so many of your classmates, if you would, in 30 years or more. And it was wonderful just to see Eddie. And what was refreshing and really inspiring about the sequel was the fact that Eddie's real children, some of his real children, were involved in the sequel as characters. And that I know that had to make it special for him. It certainly was special for me to say, my goodness, Eddie's children are now of an age where they can do uh, a reputable job as actors, and they weren't even born at the time of the original. So that lets you know how fast time can fly. And it's beautiful to see a second generation of Murphys, Eddie's progeny, performing in these roles. It was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I like I said, it was totally enjoyable. Um, And just a reference, since Jerry, John was a member of the 50th Armored Division for the New Jersey National Guard, so he's a hero. And then he was an honorary Master Chief in the Coast Guard. So, that's why I'm honored to have both of you here tonight. John, I got to show you a picture real quick that I brought up. I found out you've had a early career as a pro football player, but we found this, and I'm going to show this to you briefly. You were a member of the New Jersey Jays, right?
New Jersey Jays?
The Jersey Jays, the football team.
No, I got to correct you on that. Someone gave you some bum information. Although I was with a lot of teams, New Jersey Jays was not one of them.
Oh, what did they tell me that for? I could have sworn. Well, I got to kill Bobby Miranda. Bobby Miranda's an actor, because I was going to say that I found out that I was related to the quarterback, Rick Casada.
I'm afraid I don't recall Rick, but I'm sure he was a good player.
Well, you did play for the Chiefs, though, right?
Say again?
You played for the Kansas City Chiefs?
No, I was under contract to the Chiefs twice. And the only time I got to step field on them was against, ironically enough, the Denver Broncos. I say ironically because the Broncos were the very first team that I signed with. I went to Colorado State University, and they used my campus, that is the campus of CSU, as a training facility. And I went to training camp. All I had to do was walk around the corner from my house in Fort Collins to training camp. So when I got cut, I had a short walk back home. And I wasn't at the time, it was heartbreaking. But what had happened was I had pulled a hamstring before I went to training camp, so I couldn't even run the 40-yard dash for time, which is the first thing they do is test your speed. And I could hardly run, could barely walk with that pulled hamstring. So they had to let me go the very next day. So I had 1 day with the Broncos. But the next year I signed with Kansas City, and I stayed a little bit longer, about 3 weeks or so, and got cut, played some semi-pro ball that year, and then signed with the Chiefs again for a second time the following year, and got cut or released again. So I know what it's like to have the heartbreak of being released from something that you'd aspired to do all your life, but it wasn't in the cards for me. It just wasn't in the mix for me. So I had good times. I made some great lifelong friends. I'll always have a tremendous amount of respect for the late Hank Stram, because he put me on the right road to the right direction as to what I was to do with my life. And play football was not one of the things that I was destined to do successfully. However, I did try. I gave it my best. But my best in those days was nowhere near good enough to make a world championship team under the guidance of Hank Stram. But it was Coach Stram that also told me, said, I don't know what it is you're going to do with your life, but I have a feeling that you're missing your calling. And what had prompted him to say that was the fact that I had read a poem called The Turk, which is that euphemism or expression given to the guy that comes to release you from the team. And I read the poem in front of the team. They gave me a standing ovation. Some guys even started yelling, "You got to keep him, coach. You got to keep him, coach."
Oh, my
Coach
God.
Stram made it clear that he wasn't there to run a poetry contest. He was there looking for the guys that could help his team get to the Super Bowl. And I was not one of those guys, but I made a lot of friends, and I've got some wonderful memories, not the least of which is the way that Coach Stram embraced what talent I did have as opposed to what talent I did not have. And I tell you, we had some superhuman physical specimens there when I was with the Chiefs. People like Buck Buchanan and the late Mac Lee Hill, an incredible running back. Mike Garrett, a Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, we had some outstanding physical talents on that Kansas City Chiefs World Championship team. So I don't know what made me think that I was good enough to make a team with that caliber of players on it, but I gave it my best. It was still a wonderful experience when I reflect back on it. I'll always be grateful to Coach Stram for pointing me in the right direction as regards to my life's work, which was not to be a football player, but to act like a football player and to pretend I was a football player. So all in all, it was a wonderful experience. I'll always be eternally grateful to Coach Stram.
Well, that's amazing. And I apologize that, for the, I didn't do my research diligently enough. Jerry?
Yeah, John, if you don't mind. So, you were clearly an athlete growing up, with all your football skills. And then I read that you did boxing as well and were pretty good in the Golden Gloves. And then all of a sudden, you're on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That's a huge transition in life, that you're a world-class athlete. And then all of a sudden, you're in Hollywood. Would you mind talking a little bit about how that transition occurred?
Well, I had started as a writer as far as the entertainment industry goes. I always loved to write, and I like to write comedy especially. So I had written some material, and I brought it to the attention of a couple of the writers, guys who were already employed by the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And they said, well, okay, well, why don't you give it a shot? So I read some of my material to those prospective writers. They encouraged me. And in time, I got the job as Gordy the Weatherman, which was a recurring character on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And that gave me firsthand instruction as to how comedy was written at the network level. I had a job writing for a local television show about a couple of radio personalities, Loman and Barkley, who were radio personalities, well-established radio personalities on the local level in the Los Angeles area. And when I got the chance to write for the Mary Tyler Moore Show and to perform on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, it was like I had hit the lottery. It was unbelievable because, needless to say, Mary was a television fixture at that time.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was definitely a step up for me and established me as a performer, an actor that is, who was capable of being an important member of an ensemble called the Mary Tyler Moore Show with wonderful character actors. Wonderful, absolutely. And probably one of the best well-written shows
Oh, yeah.
as far as the sitcom genre goes at that time.
They don't make them like that anymore, John. That's for sure.
No, they don't. Mary will
Hey,
be
John.
missed.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Mary Tyler Moore and that quality of television will be missed and is missed now.
Now, John, that being said, you're doing the writing, then you got involved in the cast. How far into it were you when you caught the bug, where you said to yourself, wait, hey, I think I could do this for a living?
I think it was after I did my first play, because to me, that is the real test for an actor. Can you perform in front of a live audience? And I've always loved it. I've never had any reservations about performing in front of a live audience. I've had some amazing experiences in live theater, not the least of which was when I first went to Broadway. I went to Broadway in a play called Tough to Get Help, which at the time starred the late Jack Cassidy. And it was a wonderful, wonderful, by that I mean a very, very funny play, Tough to Get Help. And opening night, much to my dismay, we opened to a full house at the Royale Theater on Broadway. I mean, the place was packed, something like 1,400 people, and they gave us a standing ovation. They loved the play. They laughed themselves sick. But Broadway being what it was at that time, that is under the control of a few critics, and these critics had the power to determine whether or not you were going to be a success or whether you were going to be a failure. And they dictated that the show closed that night. So despite a standing ovation, 5 or 6 curtain calls, we closed the play that night. And I was so naive about the Broadway process. I went to the theater the following night and was preparing to put on my wardrobe and my makeup, since I was playing a character some 30 years older than myself at the time. And the guy who sits backstage, the one they always call Pops, who's always playing checkers, he's got his suspenders on. And he said, "Where you going, kid?" I said, "I'm going upstairs to change." He said, "You don't have to do the show tonight." And I was overjoyed. I said, "Oh my goodness, we were that good that we got the night off." He said, "No, you were that bad that they closed the show." He said, "It's over for you, kid." And I was dumbfounded. I said, "How can we get a reaction like that from an audience standing ovation, 7 curtain calls, and you close the show. Well, that's the power that the critics had at that time. And when
Yeah.
the reviews came out the same night, everything disappeared. The champagne disappeared. The congratulations, you're a hit. The movie offers, everything disappeared in one night because the show got bad reviews.
Oh,
And
wow.
you can thank the critics for that.
Right.
But
And then, John, in your opinion, I noticed that a lot of actors who start out in theater, that's like if you could do the theater, then like TV and movies is a lot easier. That's like the best training you can get because theater is so hard, especially when you're doing Shakespearean stuff. And I think it helps you get really seasoned. Do you agree with that, or?
oh, I agree. I agree that performing on stage is the best training that any actor could get because it's so unpredictable, the audience reaction. And you really have to be on your toes, not just in terms of learning the dialogue, but to really give the dialogue life and what you'd hope to do in a live performance. Because live is just that. There's no second guesses, there's no second takes. You got to get it right the first time, or else your history. And that
Yeah.
is an object lesson that I learned from performing on stage as opposed to television or movies. In movies and TV, you get a chance to do over. There's no do overs when you're doing live stage. And that's what
Right.
makes it exciting.
Wow. Now, when you finally got the role of James Evans Sr., which was one of my favorite sitcoms, another show that I watched during the pandemic, when you got that role, did you actually send Coach Stram a fruit basket and say thanks for the advice?
No, but I did call. I did call Coach Stram, and I spoke to Mrs. Stram at the time. She said, "Well, he's busy in practice, but I told him I'll tell him that you called, John. He always mentions you when he reflects back on his career as a coach with the Chiefs." So I was glad just to be part of his memory bank to say, yeah, he can confirm that I was there at Kansas City for a hot minute. I didn't last long, but I lasted long enough to let me know I appreciate the athletic talents and the character of those men that did make the team and play for Coach Stram. It was quite an honor just to be in his company.
Oh, absolutely. And, going over your resume, it's like, so many amazing things. But I tell you what, like I said, I'm a lifer with you. I'm a diehard fan. One of the movies I really enjoyed, even though you weren't, you had a part in it, was American Flyers with Kevin Costner.
Oh, yes, the bicycle racing movie.
Yeah. And I love the interaction you had with your son there. You were trying to get him to exercise and stuff.
Yeah, and he wouldn't. He was a couch potato.
Oh my God. Through your career, John, whenever a role was offered to you, whether it be movies or TVs, did you have a certain criteria, or as long as the check cleared, you were okay with it? But did it have to have something for you to be involved in it to make you wanna, or you were just happy to be working?
No, most definitely, there had to be something of substance that I could relate to in the character, and if the way the character was written or described by the writers, if I had any reservations about it, and if I had the opportunity and the privilege, I would talk to them about it, see if it could be corrected, and if it couldn't be, more often than not, I would pass. And I passed on a number of roles, and I've had no regrets about any of the roles that I did pass on or decline to be involved with the project, because I let my instincts guide me. And for the most part, I said, if it makes me laugh, it should make the audience laugh. And if it makes me feel good about the work that I've done, then so be it. That is the only criteria I really have for whether or not I would do a role.
Absolutely. Jerry?
Yeah. So, John, talking about good times, I was 11 years old when that show came out. And
Yes.
it's amazing when you're young, the things that television, how it affects you, what you see. And, there was comedy certainly in the show. But, one of the things, even as a kid, that I took away from it was the struggle of your character of trying to feed their family, trying to provide for their family, trying to be a man, right? And be, the person who leads that family, living in a rough place in a time when money wasn't plentiful and opportunities weren't plentiful. Can you tell me a little bit how you felt about that character? I always, I would see, Jimmy Walker joking around and all that. And by the way, there was humor in it and it was funny and everything. but to me, there was a bigger underlying story about, the struggles and the lives of living in that type of environment.
That was one of the things that was most appreciated about working for a producer like Norman Lear. Norman insisted and was very successful in making these characters human. And I think even now with the pandemic and so many families facing financial struggles in terms of making the ends meet and protecting the family financially and emotionally and every other way, people can relate to what the Evans family and so many others were going through at that time economically. Everybody's feeling the pinch of the pandemic, everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's about as close as we can all come to relating to what the Evans family and so many other families were going through at that time. I'm glad that I had a chance to portray a family like that because it showed them still sticking together despite the incredible difficulties that they had. I remember some episodes that pointed this out, like there was an episode in which we thought that our neighbor had invited us to dinner and that she was serving us dog food because she was on such financial constraints. And it turned out it wasn't dog food at all, but the premise of it was written in such a way that despite the seriousness of their economic situation, you were forced to laugh. I mean, you couldn't help but laugh at the possible outcome of this family being forced to eat dog food, which we did. It wasn't dog food. I was mistaken, and that was a beautiful twist of writing on the writer's parts. That was the thing about Good Times. While we had some very, very humorous episodes, we also, thanks to the skill and the genius of Norman Lear and the writing staff that he had assembled, we were able to inject serious moments and an underlying sense of reality to the comedy. And that made it more believable. JJ getting shot, that certainly wasn't a comedic episode.
Right.
Teenage pregnancy, we addressed some very, very important issues in the context of a situation comedy. Teenage pregnancy, all of those issues, which were paramount issues in society at that time,
Right.
Norman Lear skillfully covered those issues and made us think about them in addition to laughing at the more humorous aspects of those situations. So I was blessed. I've always been blessed with great writing in most situations I've been in television, some fantastic writing. And I went for drama as well when I got to portray chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Percy Fitzwallace in The West Wing, easily one of the best written political themed programs on television at that time. We could use some of that writing by Aaron Sorkin. We could certainly use it today. Aaron Sorkin was a gifted writer, producer. And again, I was very fortunate in being cast in that project along with some superb actors, Martin Sheen, the late John Spencer.
Yes, John Spencer.
I've been extremely fortunate. I don't know if people realize the odds of hitting the jackpot when it comes to television, but I hit it several times, dramatically and comedically, with Mary Tyler Moore on the comedy side, and of course, The West Wing, and some other important, serious dramas as far as the dramatic aspects of television goes.
Yeah. John, what you said is so true, especially about Good Times. We laughed, but they were able to incorporate what was like you said, what was going on, and they tackled certain issues, and they didn't hit you over the head with it, and nobody got mad, and nobody was up in arms about it, but you actually learned something. You were entertained, and like, okay, listen, this isn't the right way to be, and see, that's the beauty about that television, which we don't see. And listen, there's a lot of great programs on TV. One of my favorites of the newer stuff that's been on is The Big Bang Theory. Very well-written show, very intellectual show. There's a lot of great stuff, but they, and now, like, for example, All in the Family, if that were to air today, that would never make it through. You know what I'm saying? Because of the animosity between the characters. But everybody loved each other back then. There wasn't fighting. You know what I'm saying? It was all in good spirit. Nobody took it to heart.
Yeah. There was always the undercurrent of amongst the characters that bound them together and made you want to tune in the next week. So that was the magic of television in those days, and I'm not sure it exists today at all.
Yeah. Another one of my pet peeves, John, and you know, like I said, I was happy to see Coming to America, the second one, because we wanted to see it. We wanted to know what happened to Akeem, and but what is with all the reboots of stuff? I'm talking about TV shows. You mean to tell me there's not a young writer somewhere sitting in a cafe in Hollywood that
Mm.
has fresh ideas? They keep bringing, like Magnum PI and Hawaii Five O. They're okay, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, is it that bad in Hollywood that they're only going to use stuff that they know has a built-in audience already? Is it all about money?
I believe that money has become the driving force behind what we're offered on television. It's regurgitation. We've either seen it in some form or another on just about every channel. I think a great many of the young writers that we hope will lead us into the next genre of movies that we can really appreciate in television programs. I think for the most part they're creatively bankrupt. And I say that not casting any aspersions on any particular network or any particular group of writers, but they've got to come up with something meaningful. And the best example I would hope that they would emulate would be that of Norman Lear, who wove
Yeah,
substance with comedy. And
yeah,
that is much more memorable and much more impactful than just spouting out statistics or drama or just buffoonerish comedy. When you mix the two, intelligent comedy with important social issues, you got something that is going to last and be impactful for generations to come, I believe. So, All in the
yeah,
Family, I agree with you. I'm not sure if it would work today, but
yeah,
I knew at the time there were reservations as to whether or not it was going to work. And of course, it turned out to be one of the biggest hits that television had ever seen
yeah,
because of the skillful writing and the skillful acting and the direction in which the show was destined to go because of the direction of Norman Lear. He changed the face of television, let's face it. Up
yeah,
until the time that All in the Family came on, people were watching television and wondering if Ozzie and Harriet were going to allow Ricky to use the car that night. Those were the important issues at that time that seemed to be what television was about. Norman Lear showed that it could be a tremendous learning instrument and an instrument for social change, as it was.
yeah, yeah. Without a doubt, without a doubt. John, the first time we talked to you, you had said that you had, over your 50 plus years span of your career, that you said you had the most fun of doing the original Coming to America. Um, can you share like a behind the scenes story from the first one or one of your other movies that you did, that like a nice lighthearted story that happened, that's something that the troops would like to hear, or something funny that happened?
Yeah, we were doing the initial reading for Coming to America, the original. And that came to that point where uh, King Joffrey Joffer, or Joffrey Joffer, or James Earl Jones insults my daughter. And the line, my retort to him was written, I think it was something to the effect, if you insult my daughter like that again, and I gave him some type of a threat that was accepted, but it didn't really have the impact that I wanted it to. So I was allowed to ad lib, and without warning, I just said, you insult my daughter like that again, I'm gonna break my foot off in your royal ass. And Eddie's reaction was said he fell down to one knee and laughed, and the entire cast broke up. And John Landis, the director, said, "We'll keep that in." And I said, "I would hope so," from the reaction we got, which was an honest reaction. So that
Oh my
was
God.
indicative of the freedom I had as an actor to ad lib, and John Landis's confidence in his directorial abilities to keep the line in, and it worked. And there were so many instances comparable to that in working with an Eddie Murphy. Though he stayed to the script, he always was able to add a little flourish to it, a little something extra that was not written in there, but
Right.
he found. So to work with him was a joy. And in fact, to be directed by John Landis was also a wonderful
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, definitely. You know, it's funny when you said the line, "Well, I'm going to break my foot off in your royal ass." It reminds me of the line you said. One of my favorite lines in any movie was, like I said, back to "Let's Do It Again" when you were talking to your rival, who was Biggie Smalls, was another gangster who
Oh
the
yeah,
rapper got his name from, and you two were going at it. You know, you're the old school gangster, and he's like the young guy with the flashy clothes, and
right.
you said to him, he goes, anytime you want, sucker. And you go, you got to bring ass to get ass.
Yeah, that's a line right out of Jersey. You got to be a Jersey kid to appreciate that one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Jerry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hey, John. If you don't mind me transitioning to a show that, like no show in its time, impacted this country, was Roots. When Roots came out, I was a young guy again. I think I was 14, and I had never seen a miniseries. I didn't even know what one was, living abroad. And we, our entire family, I mean, caged around that television every night, you know, and man, did it spark some conversations, because
Yeah.
one, that show taught us about some of the history of our country that some people ignorantly didn't even know, and
Yes.
it was educational in
Yes,
that respect. And then it had so many lessons in it. It taught about overcoming adversity, really bad adversity, and how you can fight your way to good endings and things like that. And I just wanted to say, that that show really impacted our country. Our nation had not had a show like that ever. And it had to be really rewarding for you to be a part of that. And, even today, you'll be doing something or you'll be somewhere and somebody will mention Kunta Kinte, a name that nobody would have ever heard of, but that's how much you remember that show. And, what I took out of it as a little kid was, one, I was just enthralled by this, just this occurrence and this horrible stuff that happened to this young man and to a generation of people. And, the thing I took out of that is, I don't ever want to be cruel. Nobody deserves to ever be treated cruel in life like that. It was just a valuable lesson. And I was, again, just a kid. So I have to assume, maybe it's a bad assumption, that role was impacting to you as well because of the social difference you were making in our country.
Yeah.
oh no doubt, it was easily the most gratifying role. Conversing about the issue of slavery on a number of levels. As an actor, I was appreciative because of the impact that it would have on my career. Firmly established me as an actor who could handle drama as well as comedy. And I was most appreciative for David Wolper. He had already established himself as a premier producer of important subject matter like autobiography, or biography rather, in which he would do the life story of important historical figures and do it well with sensitivity. So when he undertook to do Alex Haley's book, Roots, I knew the property was going to be in the right hands. And the end result was that it captured the largest television audience in the history of the medium. So again, I found myself in a very fortunate position to be involved in a project like that with such understanding and such important relevance socially. It had
Yeah.
it made a lasting impact on the country and the world, in fact. Because the true
Absolutely.
story of slavery had never been dealt with that type of sensitivity and that type of research. So I'm
Absolutely. I
great.
mean, as a kid, you learned about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, but Roots to me was like the first, even though it was a TV movie and it was a true story. I mean, it was an actual historical thing that happened. But like I said, you learned about it in school, but then Roots was like to me the first real dose of reality TV, and you just didn't hear, but they actually pulled the curtain back. Oh yeah, you think you know about slavery or whatever, and they pulled the curtain back. Now watch this, and then you get to see the stuff that they don't tell you about in school and stuff. So I think it was an eye opener for a lot of people.
You know, Carlo, when I watched that as a kid, I'm from a little old country town in Oklahoma. You know, it's a small town of 12,000 people, all white, a completely all white town. You know, just out in the middle of nowhere. At least back in those days. You know, this is in the 70s. It's no longer that way. And you know what was interesting? We would go to school the next day. Every single kid in class was talking about Roots. You know, everyone was watching it. Everyone was watching it. And it was just impactful. People were like, wow. You know, and people were talking about conversations, you know, that hadn't been talked about in my little town before.
Right.
And that was all driven by a miniseries. And I mean, I cannot underscore, and I know you know it, but I just can't underscore the impact that this thing had on our nation in terms of understanding and history and conversations. And when you live in an all-white town, and each day in classroom, the teachers and all the students are talking about last night's episode of Roots, man, you've done something big.
Amen. Credit to Norman Lear and the entire Roots production staff, and of course, credit to Alex Haley for having written the book in the first place. So we were able to educate and entertain at the same time on a worldwide global level. And I don't think there's anything more important for anybody in the media to do than to educate and entertain at the same time.
Absolutely. And right now,
I
you
don't
know,
think
John,
shows since then
yeah,
that's had that impact. I don't think there has. I don't, you know, there's been some great shows and great things out there, but a show that impacted the world the way that did, I don't know that there's ever been another one.
and but you know what? It impacted it was an eye opener. It impacted them in a positive way as far as like this isn't right, and going forward, we can't let this happen anymore. You know, so John, you know, you got to work on Coming to America too, and you know, was still during the pandemic. But how did you know, as a guy who was always busy as yourself, how did you handle the downtime?
I think during the downtime it was a good time for me because it gave me a chance to reflect on my family and to focus on my family, my children, my daughter, my son, Casey and Shannon, and even to my granddaughter because she was coming along about that time. She's now a grown woman and educated and has been teaching and working overseas for a couple of years now. So I'm grateful for what it did for me in terms of downtime because I use that downtime to read, to study, and to focus on those things in my life aside from show business because there is more to life than just performing and being a TV star or a movie star. There's a lot more to life than those two facets of my career, which I've enjoyed and they've been rewarding to me. But there are other things in life.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And you know, the only thing I didn't like about the movie is that you weren't in it enough. Coming to America too. I wanted to see more Cleo McDowell because you were one of my favorites. But I
Well,
give it I give it 5 stars all the way.
thank you very much.
Jerry,
I had wanted to be in it more, but I had to go with the way the script was written. So
I,
far so good.
next time, you know what you do? You say, listen, you know, I'm from Newark, and if I'm not in it enough, there's going to be people back there that are going to be mad, and I don't want to cause no problem. Jerry, I just, I always like to let our guests know, about our men and women overseas, how important, the
No doubt.
value is. Explain to him.
Yeah, John, one of the things that I always like to do when I meet people in the movie industry and cinema and television, all those things, is I just really like to express my thanks for the art that you put out. And I don't think a lot of folks in Hollywood realize that there's a lot of men and women serving in some pretty dark places and lonely places and
Yes.
tough places and dangerous places all over the world. And I don't know if they realize that whenever you get that little bit of downtime that you can get an hour or two here on a day or somewhere, what everybody loves to do to decompress is they get on Netflix, they get on Hulu, they get on whatever it is that's out there, and they love to watch their favorite shows, their favorite movies, all those things. And I've been deployed to the Middle East 4 times, and what I will tell you is it takes you away. I've sat in camps and rockets and mortars are coming in, and I'm in my little hut, and I'm watching Coming to America, for my 50th time, And in that short little period, it takes you home. It gets you mentally out of that place and puts you in a different place. So I really like to say thank you to people for producing the art that you produce. And then a guy like you can especially understand it because you've worn the boots. You've been in the military, you've worn those boots, and you understand the sacrifices and the things that people make. So to you, my sincerest thanks to you and everybody for the art that you produce for us.
Well, I say I'm obligated. I feel compelled to say thank you to all those men and women who have served and continue to serve to protect the freedoms that we have in this country. I don't know if people really realize the degree of freedom that we have until you've lived or worked or served overseas and you see the deprivation of those freedoms or the absence of those freedoms. That's when you really appreciate being born and raised in the United States. The freedoms we have are incomparable to freedoms allowed in other countries. So I'm deeply grateful to each and every woman and man who has served and taken a vow to protect this country, because it's a tremendous obligation, and we're seeing our country under attack now by those with ulterior motives. So I'm grateful to be part of the former military, and the best I did was serve in the United States National Guard, the 50th Armored Division out of New Jersey, and it was a wonderful experience for me. It taught me discipline can be instilled at a very early age, and it's a lifelong obligation you feel. When you take that first vow, that was the very first vow that I ever took to protect this country. And when you make a vow like that at a young age, it stays with you. So that was one of the first commitments I ever made in my life. And I still adhere to it, and I still hold it up as something I've got to honor. That is to protect my country, my family, and my way of life. End of story.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you for
John?
Kind and gracious words, and thank you for your service. And we cannot do it without our National Guard and our reserve forces. I've commanded troops all over the world, and
Yes, sir.
we cannot do it without them. We cannot. We wouldn't survive. So thank you.
Well,
I'd be glad to do it again if called on.
Oh, absolutely. And John, I apologize that we ran a little bit over time, but we were having so much fun with you, and it's always a pleasure. Like I said, we don't get a chance to speak to many living legends, and I just wanted to thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and continued success with Coming to America 2, which is now on Amazon Prime Video. And if you guys haven't watched it, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. Don't make me have to break my foot off in your royal asses. Get out there and watch this movie. John, before you go, can you do me one small favor?
I'll try, sir.
Can you do a station ID for me?
Absolutely. There's one thing I'd like to mention, if I may.
Absolutely.
I did it during the pandemic. And I think it's important because of the subject matter. Because of Charlie is the name of the film, an independent film, but I'm very proud of it because it tells the story of a dysfunctional family that is caught in Florida during a hurricane. And what the hurricane subjects his family to, as dysfunctional as they are, is a healing process where they're forced because of circumstances to come together, to relate to each other, and discover that they all do love each other in their own special way. Because of Charlie is a film worth seeing. It's a small story, but it's about a very realistic family composed of just about every diverse element that you can imagine in today's society. But they have a lesson that they can share with the audience if they come to see that film. Because
is it out now, or has it been released?
Yes, Because of Charlie has been released, and just check all your outlets. I can't keep up with all this high-tech stuff.
Yeah, you still have a Rolodex at home, right?
You got it. But at any rate, Because of Charlie is worth seeing. And again, I'm grateful to Eddie and Arsenio and everyone involved in Coming to America. I'm equally proud of that film. I look forward to many, many more years of watching Eddie Murphy on the big screen.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you a question. I know it's a little early. Is there a possible third one in the works?
It's a little too early for me to say that or to even have a voice in it. I don't know if there's going to be a third one or not. I guess the audience, the public will dictate that. If they demand a third one, like coming to America 2 or 3 or whatever they're going to call it, I'm sure it'll happen. But I think we better ride the momentum of coming to America before we even think about 3.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, John, if you can, before we let you go, you're going to basically say, hello, this is John Amos, and you're listening to Animal House Radio.
Say when.
Whenever you're ready, you go.
Hello, this is John Amos, and you are listening to Animal House Radio.
Look at that. Beautiful. John, continued success. God bless. I hope you and the family stay safe. And if you ever get to Newark, let me know. I'll buy you a slice at the Finish Line Pizzeria.
You got it. A slice.
There you
pepperoni,
go.
sausage, and I like anchovies too. So
I'm going to bring Tums with me too, because at our age, we can't tolerate that anymore.
Yeah, you got that right, buddy.
John Amos, thank you so much. God bless. Stay safe. And once again, thank you for all you do. And Jerry, thank you for 33 plus years for keeping us safe on all over the world. And I can't thank you, gentlemen, enough. And it's always a pleasure to have you as my co-host. John, thank you. God bless. Coming to America, Amazon Prime. Coming to America, Amazon Prime Video. Get out there, or I'm going to break my foot off in your royal asses. John, thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Take care, gentlemen. Stay safe.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless. Okay, Carlo, you're good?
Yeah, we're good. We're
Okay,
hold on.
Man, that was fantastic.
Fantastic.